Today on Larry King Now, does heaven exist?
Tonight, the NBC 10 investigators track down a doctor whose research may come closer than anyone else to answering the question, is there life after death?
Another powerful story of an Ohio man who says the afterlife is real and people need to believe it.
I couldn't catch my breath. It was getting shallower and shallower, and I can remember saying to myself, I am dying.
And then his blood pressure dropped.
And I looked at the doctor and I said, what's wrong with him?
His heart stopped.
And he says, well, we need to intubate your husband right now, or else he could die.
And then we start doing the chest compressions.
Dean Braxton's system was shutting down. It started as a routine procedure to remove a kidney stone. Now he was dying. Dr. Manuel Irigi was on duty in the critical care unit at St. Francis Hospital in Federal Way, Washington. He explains what went wrong.
As it turns out with him, the antibiotic that he received was not good for the bacteria. He was resistant.
Dean's body went into multi-organ failure, and his heart flatlined. Dr. Irigi's team worked furiously to revive him. Dean's wife, Marilyn, prayed.
I did say to the Lord, I said, Lord, you said in your word that you've come to give Dean life, and life abundantly, and I claim that abundant life for him.
At times, the unit was in chaos as they worked to save Dean's life. But he was experiencing something very different.
I wasn't afraid. It was like, I'm going home.
Dean believes he went to heaven.
When I first entered in, it was just bright. It wasn't so much what I saw as much as what I experienced. The first thing I perceived was, everything is right. There's nothing wrong here. And I said, it's past peace. You know, there's a scripture in the Bible in Philippians, the 4th chapter, that says, peace past understanding. That's what's going on there. It's landscape, but more, because everything's alive. Nothing's dead. I don't mean just live like grass. I mean, it's intelligent, it can move, you know, it thinks. And someone says, well, that's way out there. It was way out there for me. You know, I'll tell you the truth.
We got a pulse.
Dean says he felt like he was being pulled back into his body. Then he flatlined a second time. Again, he was in heaven. This time, he saw Jesus.
The first thing that comes to me is he's bright, just like John says, he's brighter than the noonday sun. And the next phrase I say, I wish people could grab it, and it's this one, and we can look at him. And what you're looking at is not so much the physical part of it, you're really experiencing the love he has for you. And I tell people it's like he only loves you and no one else. I saw him communicating to angels. He would just look at them. Communication there was thought to thought. They would acknowledge his receiving his information, bow before him like this, and then back out. And it was like, wow.
Dean admits he didn't want to come back.
And I don't tell you the truth, I was happy. I was planning on staying, you know, and people always say, yeah, you know, didn't you love your wife and your children? Yes, I loved them probably more than I ever could. But I was thinking, you come here where everything is right.
Then Dean saw family he hadn't seen in a long time.
And yet, on the other side of Jesus was my family, my grandmother Mary, but with her were other relatives. And some I had recognized. I had been on this planet when they were here. But then there was generation after generation after generation after generation of those that accepted Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, that helped to produce me on this planet. they came to greet me in. And it was like, God.
While Dean was in heaven, Marilyn continued asking God for a miracle.
I purposed in my heart that whatever the outcome, I was going to follow God all the way.
After an hour and 45 minutes, Dean came back with a weak but steady heart rate. But the bacteria had done a lot of damage, and he had to go on dialysis.
I did not think he was going to survive. In a way, I told his wife that, now, well, we have just to pray and wait, because there is nothing else I can do.
I believe in healing. I believe that God is a healer. And I was trusting God for Dean's healing.
3 days later, Dean woke up.
He was so eager. We got to get people saved. We got to let people know about Jesus.
Despite doctors' concerns that Dean's prolonged ordeal would leave him impaired or even worse, there are no signs that Dean even had a brush with death. He's the picture of health. In fact, the staff at St. Francis Hospital dubbed him the Miracle Man.
It's a miracle that he's alive. There is no question about it. It is a miracle. Yeah, he's alive, that he's talking, that he has no brain damage. But this is very exceptional, because he was really dead for a long time.
So what does a man do who's experienced heaven and still wants to be there? Dean says Jesus told him something that keeps his feet firmly planted.
I felt like he was saying, I need you there more than I need you here. And I came to understand then how important it was for me to complete what God had put me on this planet to do. The bottom line is, until I'm finished here, and I cannot go back home. I tell people most of the time, I'm on my way home. Don't get me wrong, I'm on my way home. This is the pathway my Father says I have to go to get home.
I instantly fell to my knees in front of him. And I knew that I was falling in the presence of God.
Crystal McVeigh wasn't having a dream. She had died and says she woke up in heaven.
And it was this God that I had run from my whole life.
Her journey away from him began when she was molested at 3 years old.
I grew up believing that I was disgusting and broken and filthy.
Crystal went to church with her mother. When she was 8, she accepted Christ and was baptized. She hoped that would cleanse her from the guilt and shame of being molested. But the abuse continued until she was 12 years old.
I decided that there were two options. Either one, there was a God and he didn't love me for whatever reason, because he hadn't stopped the things that had happened in my life, he hadn't saved me, or two, there was no God.
In her teen years, Crystal started using drugs and alcohol and was promiscuous. By the time she was 21, Crystal was a divorced mother with 2 children. Finally, at 28, she settled down and married Virgil, and they had twins. 10 months later, in December 2009, doctors performed a routine procedure that triggered pancreatitis. She had complications and ended up with a 110-degree fever. Her mother, Bonnie, came to the hospital.
She didn't look right. She looked swollen to me. They had put her on a pain pump.
I felt very calm and very peaceful. And I remember opening my eyes and seeing my mom sit at the chair at the foot of my bed. And I told her that I loved her.
Mom, I love you. She felt cold. And when I looked up, her lips were blue. And she wasn't breathing. And I turned around and her face was black. And I just started screaming, she's dead, she's dead. The nurse told me, she said, you need to leave, you need to, and I told her, I'm not going anywhere.
Code blue, we need the crash cart in here. Quick.
For the next 9 minutes, doctors and nurses tried to resuscitate Crystal. About that time, Crystal's husband Virgil arrived.
Everything went through my mind. I didn't know if she was alive, I didn't know if she was dead.
I know why they didn't want me in there. It's violent. And so her 9 minutes in heaven were my 9 minutes in hell.
While the team worked to revive her, Crystal says she was in heaven.
The first thing I remember becoming aware of was that I was still me. And I was still the me who had just told my mother that I loved her and died. And I was very aware of the fact that I had just died. but I was also the me that had existed from the moment that God had created me. The light came to me as if I was in the middle of the tunnel, yet it went on for eternity. I remember being so at peace and so bathed in this light and this love.
She knew she was in the presence of God.
I didn't see a face. I didn't see any features other than this beautiful light. And words like amazing and perfect and beautiful, they fall so drastically short. I could not get enough of him. I could not breathe enough of him in. I could not get close enough to the light, and the light was all over me.
Then, Crystal says she tried to ask God a question.
I wanted to know why he didn't love me, or why he lets bad things happen. And yet as I stood in front of him and I faced him and I fell to my knees and I raised my hands, the question I called out to him was, why didn't I do more for you? Because in an instant, he revealed his true self to me, which is love. I had never truly worshiped God ever in my entire life, but I fell in front of him and I worshiped him. And as I lay there in worship and awe of this Creator, I remember saying, I could worship you for eternity.
Crystal traveled with God down a tunnel toward the gates of heaven. She noticed a small child ahead of her.
She wore a bonnet on her head and she had a little white basket in her hand. I watched her pick her basket up and dip it in the light. She would scoop it and then she would dump the light out as if it was water, and the light would cascade out of her basket, and she would throw her head back and she would laugh. And every time she laughed, every time she moved, my spirit began to swell as if it was a balloon with love.
God revealed to Crystal that she was seeing herself at 3 years old.
She was me at the moment that the enemy stepped into my life and whispered that I was worthless, that I was broken, that I was disgusting, that I got everything I deserved. She was the 3-year-old that heard that God didn't love her, that he had abandoned her, that he had forsaken her, and that God didn't exist. And he allowed me to know that he had allowed me to look through his eyes and to see the truth. And the truth set me free.
All of Crystal's doubts about the existence of God and his love for her faded away.
I remember what it felt like to be in chains. And I remember the moment that he took them from me. I was free, and he didn't just say, Crystal, I love you. He allowed me to experience his love, and his love almost made me explode.
Then Crystal says she heard her mother calling her name.
And I said, can I go tell her that I'm okay? And he said, the choice is up to you. And I turned away from this light to go and find where her voice was coming from. And when I turned, he said, tell them what you can remember. And I remember calling back, I'll remember everything and I'll be right back. And I looked down through the floor of this tunnel of heaven, and it was as if I was looking at 1,000,000 shimmering diamonds. And the instant that I noticed those diamond-like substance, I was back in my body.
Crystal woke up in the hospital surrounded by the medical team.
And I turned to my mom, who was crying, and I told her that I was in heaven, that I was with God, and that I was in the most beautiful light, and that I was okay.
Crystal left the hospital 8 days later. She'll tell you she left there a different person.
My life has completely changed. The person that died in that hospital room was not the same person who came back in so many different ways. But the difference is that I know that there is a God who loves us. I know that there is a Father who really is listening to us, who really is holding us.
Crystal has written about her journey in her New York Times best-selling book called Waking Up in Heaven.
People often ask me, what is your message? What message did he send you back with? And it is so simple that it just doesn't matter who we are, where we've been, what's been done to us, what we've done, that his love is so vast and so great that it encompasses everything. And that we have that love not for anything that we've done to deserve it, but because he finds us worthy and because he gives us the choice to choose him.
Suddenly, I had some feelings, and for me to look up, I saw two angels.
When Daniel saw the two angels, he wanted to let his wife know, but the angel indicated that he should keep silent. Immediately, Daniel's power of speech was taken from him. Neka began to cry, fearing that Daniel would die. The angels took Daniel by his shoulders and lifted him out of the ambulance. Suddenly, Daniel found himself in another place with one of the angels.
Daniel, I have a lot to show you.
As he looked out, Daniel saw a place where a multitude of people gathered, and their appearance was like that of the angels. Their color was pure white, and their bodies seemed to glow with radiance. Because of their similar appearance, Daniel thought he was seeing a gathering of the angels.
This is not the gathering of the angels, Daniel. This is the gathering of the saints.
The differences between the saints and the angels were subtle. Their color is a pure, brilliant white from their hair down to their feet. But the difference is that the angels have wings, while the saints do not. The saints were worshiping God. They worshiped God with one voice and raised their hands as they were singing. Daniel heard the sound of many instruments, and the sounds were like nothing he had encountered before. He longed to join these people and moved over towards them, but the angels stopped him.
Daniel, don't go. I have a lot to show you. Take this file and record everything you see.
The multitude that Daniel saw were all looking at a bright light that shone like the sun. It was the source of all the light there.
A very thick, heavy light coming upon them there. Now, they were all looking at that light as if they are seeing something there. But to me, I cannot look at that light. I cannot look at that light because it's so dangerous to my eyes. So I try to dodge to look through, but they were looking through. But to me, I cannot look through.
Let's visit the mansions Jesus prepared for his people.
Immediately, Daniel was in a new place with radiant mansions as far as the eye could see. It was incomparable to anything he knew on earth. Though the appearance resembled buildings, the structure was unusual, not made of any earthly materials. They seemed to be alive, moving.
Daniel, Jesus has finished his work. The mansions are ready.
but the saints are not ready.
There was a sound of beautiful singing and worship, and it seemed to come from all around. Daniel wondered where the singing was coming from, because he could see no people there.
Daniel, the worship song you're hearing is being sung by the flowers.
As he looked, Daniel saw the flowers swaying in response to the music. It actually seemed as if they were clapping their hands, shouting, and praising God.
They are waiting for the saints.
People started praying for him, praying for resurrection.
As prayers was going on, then his heart began to pant. Life began to come in his heart. We continued praying, we were praying. As all these things were going on, he began to breathe gradually, but his body was still stiff.
Then the angel said to me that he's sending me back to the world to go and warn this generation, because this is going to be the last warning to this generation.